Every year, people, I have to deal with this fucking shit. Okay, people, so it's November 4th, 2018. I took Amari to the hospital yesterday. I slept there last night, people. I was so tired because I've been doing this yard work, right? Anyway, I took ShaMay's box. This is her medical records in here. I was going to read them last night as I was sitting in the room, but instead I decided to just get some sleep because I was tired. Because I try and tell myself, when you're tired, rest. When you're hungry, eat. Because oftentimes when a person is busy, even though they're tired, if they're in that mode, they'll just keep working, and then they crash the next day or two. Right? I can work 2-3 days straight, hardcore, and then I crash, right? Thing about me, though, is I'm tired, right? But my body only requires so much sleep, usually. So sometimes it's just 3 hours, 4 hours. Sometimes it's 5, 6, usually 5, 4 or 5. And then every now and then I have to play catch up, right? So anyway, Amari is getting testing now to narrow down what he's suffering from, right? And he had blood tests today, people. You know, for all Amari's issues, he's never been sick. Only one time he had a fever, and that was the night ShaMay died. ShaMay died April 11th at 9 a.m. in the morning, and by 10, 11 o'clock at night, Amari started coming down with a fever, and he had a fever to the point where I had to break his fever as if he was like, well, he was young, he was only 7 months old, right? Cooling him off, right? Taking off his sleeper and letting his body be in the air to help bring down his temperature, right? Eventually his temperature did break, but he went to the doctor the next day and he was okay. But outside of that, people, he's like, hasn't been sick, but he's in the hospital and he's getting all this major testing done. He's going for an MRI tomorrow. He's like 13 months old and he's going for an MRI. Brain scan. I mean, out of a population of, what, 800,000 children in that age group, you know, 3 and under, how many of them actually get MRIs? Hold on a minute.
Can I stay downstairs by myself?
No. Okay, anyway, as I was saying, how many kids across the province have MRIs? Just hold a minute. Okay, we'll try this again. Oh. I've actually been crying, people. Crying for, I don't know, a few hours anyway. Alright, not like real cry, boo-hoo cry, but crying, nonetheless, crying. As I'm running around with ShaMay's box. Alright. In Andre's hospital room. Hiding it under the bed. Thinking I was going to start reading it, right? But I didn't. I went to sleep instead. And then Amari had a blood test this morning. Poor little guy, 13 months, and all of a sudden it's like vampires. But they're testing for like chromosome deficiencies or defects, which is like almost like a DNA type testing, to rule out a hereditary factor, right? In terms of when in the initial stages of when a fetus actually develops, right? As when it's still in its nucleus stage, all right? And then the MRI is to help determine if there was an injury to the brain at some point in his gestation period or at or soon after birth, right? I don't know if they can exactly pinpoint where that brain injury would occur due to lack of oxygen versus chromosome deficiency, but the blood test is more for the DNA part, chromosome part of determining any deficiencies or defects, and the MRI I think is more like a developmental, as right. All his organs, everything seemed to be working, right? Like he hasn't been, like I said, one day. He had a fever one time. I broke the fever and he's been fine, stuffy nose, whatever. Outside of that, flat nose, you take him to the doctor, doctor's, oh, it's flat nose, and Andre, whatever, ShaMay, dusty house. Some house is better than no house, right? Doesn't matter where you go, you're always going to run into dust. It's just different kinds of dust, that's all. Some are more dustier than others. They're ripping up down over here, eh? And they've been digging a big hole to build a big skyrise. And they had trucks going back and forth for like 2 months. One of them actually killed a cat out here on the road. Poor thing. It was like a 20-year-old cat. It used to come to my pond and drink water. And they rolled up on it at 7:30 in the morning and squished the poor thing, right? And took it to the owner, and she got it cremated, and, her daughter was crying because the cat had been in the family for 20 years. And I mean, what a terrible way to go with these big huge, double attached dump trucks, hauling, coming in empty and then hauling, going out full with dirt, right? Which is dust flying around in the neighborhood. At some point, they're going to start ripping up my alley, and that's even going to be more dust, right? Because they're going to rip up all the cement, and they're laying new pipes back there. So not only am I getting it from the front, the trucks have slowed down because they've taken out all the land, right? Because they dug a big hole in there. I just haven't gone down there to videotape it yet. And, of course, they cut down a bunch of trees to do it too, people. Right? Yeah, so, now they're going to be ripping up the back. So that adds more dust that comes into the house, right? Okay, so anyway, he's having an MRI tomorrow. And for me, this is like, occupational therapist came in, and I'm like, who are you? And OCT and PTA, right? And I'm like, holy shit, here we go all over again with Uncle John. It was just like, I told him, I said, it's not like I have a good trust for this process. I'm trying to be open. I'm trying to be fair, but at the same time, when they were giving him blood tests, I had to put my foot down and kind of like get bitchy and say, look, you need to stop because you're like jabbing him too many. Oh, it's one poke. I said, no, it's not. Yeah, you poke it in once, pull it out, go again, and I said, this is why you don't allow people to bring cameras in, because if I was videotaping that and then put it up online so that, people could see what you're actually doing to my grandson, there would be a great outcry. Right? So, like I said, like, how do you feel? How would you feel if I came to you and, you get blood tests and they're poking here, you tell him to stop. Amari doesn't have a voice, right? I am his voice. I told him to stop, and there needs to be an alternative. And when I asked him for an alternative in terms of what they were doing between the two veins, right? Because first it was this one, then it was this one, and then it didn't work, and it's like 7 pokes here and 4 pokes there, and then they want to go back and start poking in the same, and I'm like, hold on a minute, like, when does it stop? 25 pokes, 50 pokes, 100 pokes? So they were going to go get the doctor, and because, I'm asking for an alternative. I'm not saying you can't get his blood, I'm just saying you don't have the right to poke him 25, 50 times to get it, right? That's impractical. He did nothing to these people. He's just an innocent little boy that's coming in off, the streets kind of thing, right? You know what I mean? And he hasn't been sick a day in his life, right? He's only had one fever. It's not his fault that he can't move. Doesn't give people the right to start poking and poking and poking and poking. So now I'm the bad nana, right? And you're looking, and I'm looking, right? They were going to get the doctor, and as they were getting the doctor to find out what that alternative was, because I said, you can't poke again in this arm. He's already been poked, right? And it's not one poke. You know, let's be real about it. It was like 5 pokes. In and out, in and out, in and out. Like, nobody would go to a medical clinic and allow that to happen to them, so why should we do it to a baby? Right? Oftentimes it's just easier to go for a different vein, and that's what I told him. Why are you not going for someplace else? Why does it have to be right here? Why can't it be somewhere else, right? That's what happens if I get somebody that can't, you know, do mine. Oh, well, okay, forget it then. Let's go someplace else, right? And then they get it. All right, none of this jabbing shit, right? And anyway, he found one down here, and once he missed, okay, twice he got it. It was done. So that part's done, right? And you know, my thing is, just because you can't move very much, right, doesn't mean that one day he's not going to grow up and play beautiful music, because his mother was very talented in terms of being musically inclined. And not only was she very talented, but she was highly intelligent people. And I'd like to think that Amari inherited that, and I am trying to preserve his brain, right along with keeping his body healthy and to protect him from unnecessary pokes. You know what I mean, right? Like, this isn't something that should be done regularly, because there's no need for it, because he's lived his life for 13 months without a single blood test outside of when he was born, and he hasn't been sick. So, you know, that doesn't mean, again, that it opens up a doorway to start charging taxpayers to, you know, go get his pokes every 6 months, right? You know, that's not going to change his outcome in life, other than he's going to be a depressed man waiting for the next poke, right? Versus, you know, learning to live with his disability and communicating and accessing tools, so that, you know, as he matures in his brain, because his body is always going to be behind, right? But his brain will pass the body, and then it will take over parts of the body as he learns to use parts of his body. But there's many parts of his body that I don't think he'll ever be able to use, right? And so, you know, he's going to need to get his stimulation elsewhere, and obviously that's through thinking and being creative with that thought. So I'd like to think that he's inherited the talent to be musically inclined, and as he matures, he will learn to tap into that resource, and it will become very valuable for him and others around him, and he will have a better quality of life. So through all that, I'm crying, right? Because I don't think anybody cares, honestly. You know, in terms of professional people, it's a job, you know, it has to be done. The doctor ordered it. I'm required to do it. Doesn't matter how I do it, as long as it gets done, right? And when someone like me comes along and said, hold on a minute, no, it's not getting done, because we're going to find an alternative, even if it means that we have to get the doctor to bring in that alternative, right? But here's an alternative, try that, and if it works, great, we don't have to bother the doctor. So on his file, I'm going to put, you know, I'm going to make sure that they list that for future blood tests in the event that I'm not there, right? Because there's no guarantees in life, right? Poof, you could be gone and nothing moves, right? And I just have a box underneath the bed that represents the mother, right? In terms of, right? It should be ShaMay that's there, not me. I should be under the bed in the box, right? Or at least sitting on the bed watching, versus having to set my own boundaries or rules or whatever you want to call it, right? So I'm going to make sure that they have it listed that he does better with blood tests or an IV or whatever it is on this side, because he still needs to be sedated. I've asked for oral sedation for tomorrow for the MRI, and not anything where he's being poked, but ultimately I don't make that decision, right? But if they do decide to give him an IV, then it should be through one of the veins in this area, because it was much easier for the technician to access it and less stressful for the child and their loved ones, right? What else did I want to say? I don't know, people. It's just very odd having to find myself in this position with a conflict of interest in terms of my feelings and my experiences that relate to, you know, a great mistrust towards the Fraser Health Authority and their staff. I realize it's a different floor with different problems, but at the end of the day, we're still dealing with the same union. We're still dealing with the same beehive mentality. We're still dealing with the same predatory behavior that has been allowed to flourish, in a sense where, you know, those tax dollars go by any means necessary, right? And hopefully he'll be done. Well, hopefully they'll just let us go tomorrow after his MRI. He might come home tonight, right, for a day pass, depends. And then he has his MRI tomorrow. That'll take a little while to determine the results of that, I would think. But once the doctor gets that information, it will be much more easier to, I guess you can say, accept what we have. Because that's what I told the nurse, too. I said, look, you know, like, you know, I love Amari for Amari, right? I want him to have those opportunities, to have a mind and to be able to use it, and to have a quality of life, and that, you know, he deserves that, right? So anything too excessive is not good. So far it's just moderate. Maybe moderate. I don't even know what I'm talking about. All I know is I've been crying for the last 3 hours off and on, and that my grandson is getting some medical attention here in terms of determining as to what's affected his mobility issues.